Okay, you're all set to go, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Welcome to today's June 21st council meeting. Welcome members of the public, staff, and members of council. Before we get started, I have a couple of statements that I'd like to read. As you are all aware, your council is about to embark on a new journey this evening. This course was not something any of us expected. I would like to take a moment to let you all know that I am 100% committed to fulfilling my duty as your interim leader, and that your council will follow through with the mandate that we were given at the outset of the last municipal election. I'm so proud of the work that we have accomplished so far this term, and I promise you that I will guide council with the best of my ability as we navigate this new course. South Glengarry is a place that we all love, and I know you will all be supporting council as we move forward together. Until a permanent solution is in place, I remain your deputy mayor, and Councillor Jaworski will be your second voice at the county council table as the designated alternate. For the purposes of all meetings, I will be referred to as the deputy mayor, and just so all members of council know that. Thank you. The other statement I'd like to read is in regards to the Indigenous Peoples Day. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the establishment of what was originally National Aboriginal Day, renamed National Indigenous Peoples Day in 2017. It is an opportunity to recognize the rich traditions, cultures, and heritage of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and celebrate their contributions to our province and country. Special greetings to our friends and neighbors in Akwesasne, along with Indigenous peoples that reside in South Glengarry. Today also provides us with an important opportunity to remember the loss of generations who are no longer with us, and that the continued loss experienced by residential school survivors and their families. As we reflect on the strength and resiliency of the Indigenous peoples of Canada, let us continue to strengthen our relationships with Indigenous partners and support healing and reconciliation by advancing initiatives that will make a meaningful difference in the lives of Indigenous people and their communities. I want to acknowledge the efforts of Indigenous leaders and communities to safeguard their unique heritage, traditions, and languages for future generations. We must all do our part to preserve, respect, and sustain Indigenous cultures while enhancing our collective understanding of the outstanding contributions and achievements of Indigenous peoples. I encourage all South Glengarrians to learn more about the diverse Indigenous cultures in Ontario. Thank you very much. Calling the meeting to order, moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that the June 21st council meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be open at 7:03 p.m. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. I now ask everyone to stand for the playing of our national anthem. Thank you very much. Approval of the agenda. Moved by Martin Lang, second by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any additions, deletions, or amendments?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have several items that have been requested to be moved from information only into other business for discussion. Those items being a 7AA, Public Works Facility Heating System Evaluation, item 7AM, Rail Safety Week, item 7AP, Resolution regarding Lyme disease awareness, and item 7AR, the letter regarding bell time changes.
Okay, thank you very much. So all those in favor to approve the agenda as amended? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be it resolved that the minutes of the June 7th, 2021 regular council meeting, including the closed session minutes, be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Special meeting minutes, June 11th, moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that the minutes of the June 11th special council meeting, including the closed session minutes, be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to presentations and delegations. I'm very happy to that we have our MP Eric Duncan here this evening, and there he is. Welcome, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. It's good to see you for the second time today, along with Councillor Jaworski. I had made a presentation regarding the newspaper digitization to County Council this morning and gave this MP update at the previous meeting. So this is part of my ongoing tour of local municipalities, speaking to the 5 local municipalities in Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry, City Council and Cornwall County Council. And as you may be aware, our neighbors in Akwesasne are going through their elections right now for chief and grand chief. So I've had a conversation with Grand Chief Abram Benedict and some of their administration, and hope to join them all next month with many of the similar updates, and then of course some of the unique nature of the federal local relationship in Akwesasne. But it's a pleasure to be here. Kelly, I'm not sure if you have the slide deck or whether you'd like me to share my screen. Either works, whatever you want to do.
It's entirely up to you, MP Duncan. You do have access for sharing your screen if you already have it up there, but I'm more than happy to do that for you as well.
I think I've got it here. Let's just give it a shot and see. There we go. Can everybody see the full screen okay there now?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. So just to keep myself organized, the topics I'd like to cover with you tonight and try to put a bit of a South Glengarry angle where applicable on them are the following 6 topics. And I'll just get right into them and cover them and allow some time for Q&A and your feedback at the end. As you're aware, my Cornwall constituency office is located on Brookdale Avenue, and like the municipal offices in the area, we've had open and closing to walk-in traffic for the last little while. We have resumed walk-in traffic to the office. We're starting to see an uptick, passport applications, people who still have had challenges getting their income tax completed, and the other routine case files we deal with. So just encourage anybody that needs service before coming in to call our toll-free number, and we can certainly connect people very often over the phone or by email to address a lot of their concerns or case files. And we're going to be resuming our satellite offices in Winchester and Morrisburg, and we're going to be looking at some passport clinics in a safe manner over the course of the next few months as people start to think about travel plans again, as it's safe to do so, and people who are addressing their passports that may have been expired. The last contact, many of you know Adrian, who's my executive assistant in my office, and I have his email there. If you have any particular issues or concerns or files you would like us to help with, please don't hesitate to reach out to Adrian directly, and we're certainly more than happy to give you a hand. You asked today, when I first started in municipal council in 2006, the number one question that residents asked about, if you talk to a real estate agent at that time, particularly, where the nearest school and park was. Today, the number one question that real estate and local officials are asked for when a prospective business or new resident or family moves in is, what is the cell and internet service like? I know that, as I've been dealing with in my tenure the last year and a half, a few different businesses in South Glengarry, and we continue to work with different internet service providers on fiber and some different solutions that can help them. We've had some good success in Lancaster, South Lancaster recently with some individual businesses, but this continues to be a big concern for us, and rightfully so. As you're likely aware, the Wardens Caucus and the Regional Network for Eastern Ontario have been very good in advocating for these large-scale projects. The economy of scale, their expertise and experience is very helpful. And I want you to know there is bipartisan support across Eastern Ontario, Liberal and Conservative MPs alike, for this recent gig project that is being proposed that I think would have some meaningful differences in certain parts of South Glengarry, specifically, that are currently underserviced, getting them up to more of the expectation. The issue that I've raised, and I raised this in a good debate and exchange with Minister Monsef, who's from Eastern Ontario herself, continues to be the federal program funding envelopes of where we're seeing from idea to development to an application program being available, to applying, to reviewing it, to approving that application, to negotiating the contract, to getting the shovel in the ground and eventually a switch turned on, a very long period of time, several years. And the federal government has a goal by 2030 of providing everybody with that gig standard that we talked about. I don't know about you, but if I went out to Banesville and told people, don't worry, by 2030, you'll have better internet, I don't think that response will be very well taken. And so what we need to do is make sure, I think, we have a more timely response to some of these applications. And overall, the time that it takes from an idea to switch needs to drastically improve. And we put some ideas, and those are one of the files I'm working on with our industry colleagues, of working within CRTC and working within some of the regulators to certainly speed this up, no pun intended, when it comes to internet service. The next issue or topic that I wanted to discuss, if my mouse will permit me, here we go, is Via Rail. And in South Glengarry, like a few of our county local municipalities, are going to be well served geographically with a stop in Alexandria on the Via proposal for high frequency rail that'll be going from Quebec City to Montreal, and as opposed through the 401 corridor, will be going up through Ottawa with a stop at Alexandria, onto Peterborough and into Toronto. To clarify, this is not high speed, this is high frequency, and the opportunity for Via to do this on that Ottawa-Peterborough route is because they can get a dedicated line. For those of you like me that have traveled along, the number of times we get put aside in the Via train as a freight train goes by, it hurts the effectiveness and the flow of the rail service. So it's a good thing that high frequency rail is an option. It's still in its fruition stages, but there are certainly a lot of concerns of what it means for the Cornwall station. Making sure that the number of stops, the service levels in not just in Cornwall, but Brockville, Kingston, Cobourg, and so forth, remain a priority for Via. So as you may have been aware through local media reports, Via Rail was asked to do a presentation, and it was not the best presentation I've ever seen. Actually, it was far from the best presentation I've ever seen in terms of a quality and a confidence of information. And I'll say to council on this topic, you are like me, where we've been in public life for a while, some of us longer than others, but we know if there's good news to share, a municipality or a government agency is very excited to come and tell you about it. They're going to tout it. They're going to do news releases. They're going to advertise. They're going to promote it. The simple fact that when it comes to high frequency rail and what a net benefit would be to Cornwall in this change of system, we've not seen the engagement or excitement from Via Rail. And we saw that, frankly, in the presentation to Cornwall City Council. They were vague on details. They were almost offended or couldn't believe that Cornwall would be skeptical because basic answers couldn't be given to some questions about number of stops, traffic, advertising, all those types of things. So we continue to work on this because as bus service is unfortunately collapsing as an industry across Canada, passenger rail is something that's certainly going to be even more important than ever before. So want you to know that I'm on this issue. And I think from an economic perspective, not only making sure we maintain our stops, but making sure that the agendas and the times of those stops make most sense for people to take trips to Montreal and Toronto. And the last thing I'll mention is this photo. The capital work at the station leaves something to be desired in terms of being modernized, and I think reflective of the times we're in the area. The next subject is a project that's gotten a lot of steam, again, bipartisan support from members from all parties, is the creation of a 3-digit national suicide hotline. And I want to thank County Council. I listened in earlier today, and I believe that resolution was passed, and numerous municipalities. I'm not sure if South Glengarry has had the chance yet, but that's great if you have, and much appreciated. We need a simplified number for people to access mental health supports in time of need. Frankly, that's the easy part, but we want to get that established. The core part of that as well, we need to make sure what's behind that 3-digit number is good frontline services for mental health intervention. For people who are in having suicide, crises, any mental health crises of sorts, we need to have timely services. And unfortunately, with the pandemic, it's only been exacerbated the need for it. I don't want to get too personal, but for those of you, and I've mentioned this at different councils that know me, I write sympathy cards to families and constituents who've lost a family member in our area. And I had to say, last week when I was doing my cards, I did 4 men. I thought it was 3 actually, and I hadn't finished one. There were 4 men under the age of 37 that had taken their life over the course of the last couple of weeks in our area alone. It's tragic. We need to do more, and we need to do more fast. And my message to council is this hotline is a great start, but frontline supports, particularly in rural areas, is something that we need to do, and I know is a priority and a common concern for our area. The next item, that doesn't matter where you go in this country as well, that continues to be a pressing problem, is affordable housing. I see Joanne Haley on here. Hello, Joanne. And I know from a planning perspective, diversified forms of housing continues to be a challenge for many communities across the country. South Glengarry, SDNG, even the city of Cornwall is no different. The major issues continue to be supply. It continues to be a major issue. The cost of construction, although lumber's come down 30%, which is nice to see, it is still above average and way above inflationary rates when it comes to that. You have a lot of tools. Well, I shouldn't say the province has a lot of tools at their disposal. Municipalities have certain incentives they can create, but I want to let you know there's a few federal angles that we're working on when it comes to affordable housing and particularly rental supply. We have far too many non-resident foreign buyers into our system that are using this for investment and profiteering, which is becoming a major challenge to our supply. A colleague of mine in the Vancouver area, a Conservative member, my class of 2019, lives on a street of about 25 homes, and the majority of those homes are sitting empty that have been bought by foreign buyers as investments or for other purposes, which is creating a major challenge. That ripples out to areas like ours. It may not happen in as large of volumes right now, but it certainly is growing, and we need to tackle that issue. The other thing is money laundering, and I know I'm speaking to a deputy mayor that's a real estate agent, and knowing in that industry there with FinTrack and some of the challenges that are there, but certainly it is a serious issue that we need to deal with at a national level. TVO, The Agenda with Steve Paikin, is a wonderful program I enjoy watching quite a bit, and he's done some fantastic work specifically on money laundering in Canada and its impacts in the real estate market, and that was something that really hit home for me a few years ago and something we're trying to address in Ottawa. The last thing, which is a bit more creative and is a tax incentive, we need to start doing more for purpose-built market rental housing, 4 or 5 unit, 6 unit, 10, 12 unit apartment buildings, or like we mentioned, dense forms of housing. we are getting into a problem where people are not wanting to be in the rental business for housing. People are choosing to build condos and sell them that way, as opposed to having rentals and going so forth. A big aspect of that is the GST that they would pay, and they can pass on and sell right away at the time of sale to a condo buyer. When it comes into the idea of renting, that GST, HST over the course of time is taken as a return on investment over several years. It takes a long while to get it back. An idea we need to create tax incentives. I've been a personal advocate for, I know many of my colleagues have been, is waiving the GST and providing some tax incentives when it comes to getting more rental housing built. We've got to level up the game a little bit more and realize that there's some specific bumps that we need to help all communities across the country. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the beautiful picture here of the Charlene Arena. Congratulations to council and municipal staff for getting their fair share of funding. That's a key part of my job. And not only the recent infrastructure for municipalities that came through, I was delighted to be with Francis Drouin at the Bishop's House a few weeks ago to talk about some funding there through Parks Canada, which has certainly been well-deserved for all the volunteer efforts. So the challenge we have with this, and I've said to each municipality, there is no shortage of dollars and promises made by political parties to have infrastructure programs and to dole dollars out. But I'm finding more and more, and this comes back from my municipal days, and I see it even more now at the federal angle, we need to have better timely applications and answers on these programs. So for you and your budget cycle, I know, and having worked with the municipal staff for several months over the winter, that the okay and the announcement for this project was made into the late winter, early spring almost, I think it was. And that made it not possible in this case to be able to get the project out to tender, get it back, get a shovel in the ground, and be completed in this season. It's now being bumped back. Too many infrastructure projects are finding that. Proposal that I think is very reasonable is to say when a program is announced, applications should be out over the summer. They should be reviewed in the fall, announced in the fall. So as municipalities, you have the opportunity to include that in the following year's budget. You can allocate your revenues and taxation and resources needed. And also the RFP that goes out is out in the time of the year that you can get the most number of competitive bids and get a project done as soon as the weather clears up in the spring. That doesn't cost money. That takes organization, and that's something I've been pushing for in Ottawa. It doesn't cost any money just to work smarter, not harder when it comes for that. Last thing on infrastructure, there's two good programs, the Enabling Accessibility Fund and New Horizons for Seniors. I encourage your staff or any community groups in South Glengarry, please keep apprised of those programs, apply for them, and that's part of getting our fair share. They have been very strong programs that have been around for many years that have helped many organizations and community centers and groups, and just want to make sure you're aware of that plug in your travels to know that at different times of the year, the funding envelope for those projects are up and going. So with that, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I will pass it back to you, and happy to take any questions, comments, or feedback that members of council have for me on any federal issues that you'd like.
Okay, thank you very much, MP Duncan. I definitely appreciate all the hard work that you're doing for our residents. I'll open up the question to the floor. Are there members of council who have a question? Okay, that's good. Oh, Councillor Jaworski.
Almost got away. Almost got away.
Almost. It'll be an easy one. It's more of a comment. Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor Warden. No, I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming to speak to us and giving this clear and covering many topics update. I do appreciate it. And if there are things that we could be doing differently to help advocate on some of these issues, I think that'd be guidance that we would appreciate as well. As you say, to work smarter, not work harder. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mr. MP, for your presentation tonight. A lot of things that come top of mind to me were the cell gap, and as well with our arena and projects like that. Like Councillor Jaworski said, work harder or work smarter, not harder. It's a big thing, especially for us when there's already enough red tape. We don't need timelines to be another one. So we really appreciate the work you're doing. Keep up the good work. Whatever we can do to help, we're there for you.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you. And that's good. Councillor Lang is just smiling. So
Give a thumbs up.
thank you once again, MP Duncan, for your presentation. I can certainly say it's refreshing having the dialogue that you do with us, and we certainly appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate it very much to be here. Keep in touch. And my goal is to do these at least on an annual basis. But if there's any issues you want to have me back on specifically, more than happy to do that. And again, when it even comes to cell gap, different things like that, keep in touch and we can certainly try to give you guys a hand. Take care and enjoy the rest of your meeting, everybody.
Yeah, have a great evening.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to new business, 7AA, Place Saint Laurent Phase 5, removal of holding zone. Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So I know this area of our municipality and this particular development is very familiar to our council. We are at the final stages of Place Saint Laurent subdivision phase 5, which is comprised of 20 lots. One of the draft plan conditions in subdivision approval is often a zoning amendment or removal of holding. And the purpose of that is just to make sure that all of this necessary studies that needed to be completed are in place. And specifically in Place Saint Laurent, the reason for the holding symbol is because our lack of ample capacity for water and wastewater. And that's why we try and put those symbols in place to ensure that we have the capacity that can be allocated, and then remove that holding symbol if and when necessary. So you see on the agenda this evening that we have 2 staff reports pertaining to this development. It was important to deal with this one first, just to make sure we have the chicken before the egg, so to speak. And I do recommend to council that they approve the removal of holding, which would allow us then to proceed with recommending to the United Counties the approval of the subdivision. So I know I kind of jumped into the next staff report a little bit, but I don't think I have anything further to add for this one. And I'll look forward to speaking to the next one thereafter. But I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of members of council? Seeing none. Moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 84-2021 be received and that bylaw 51-2021 be a bylaw to amend bylaw 38-09, the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the township of South Glengarry, site specific to part of lot 3, registered plan 101, former township of Schlottenburg, now in the township of South Glengarry, county of Glengarry, also known as Place Saint Laurent subdivision phase 5, to be removed, to remove the holding symbol to permit the development of the subject area. You read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 21st day of June 2021. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And moving along to the next staff report, Ms. Haley.
So thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So this next staff report is requesting council to recommend final approval of the Place Saint Laurent subdivision process, as well as to permit the mayor and clerk to enter into the subdivision agreement. So I'm going to speak to the development a little bit. In February 2020, the developer for Place Saint Laurent filed the draft plan of subdivision application. And that subdivision was issued draft plan approval by the United Counties, subject to several or many conditions. The developer has taken the year and a half approximately to fulfill all of the conditions, which would get us to the point where we're now ready to be before our council to recommend the conditions to be cleared, as well as the subdivision agreement to be entered into. The subdivision agreement is a standard agreement that we use in South Glengarry that, as you know, has been reviewed by our solicitors and altered from time to time. Some minor changes in between this development subdivision agreement from phases 1 through to 5. And those minor changes have really just been to update language and processes that we handle internally. This time around, we had Mr. Dylan Sege help out to review the connection fees for municipal water and wastewater. So it was good to work with Dylan and bring him up to speed in our subdivision process, as well as Mr. LeBlanc, bringing him involved in the subdivision final approval and kind of see how the stages work. And there will be subsequent staff reports coming to council and dealing with the site works and opening it up to a public right of way in hopes that we can issue building permits soon. So I won't get into every component of the subdivision agreement, of course, or we'll be here for quite some time. But I do assure you that the securities that are required follow our policy. The value of the site works were provided to us by the developer's engineer and peer reviewed by our engineering firm, which was McIntosh Perry in this case. We also did the appraisal for the parkland fee to determine if the works that are being done or the money that's being spent on the creation of the bike path is the same or exceeds the requirements for the parkland fee. And in this case, it exceeds it by far. The estimated parkland fee was $5,000. If I remember correctly, the works to complete the bike path was in the $18,000 range. So that's a benefit to our community, and hopefully we'll continue to see connectivity maybe to the north and west towards Grays Creek someday. And another component to speak to would just be the requirements for insurance, where the developer has met that as well. In this particular case, council may have noticed that site works has commenced. We typically do not permit that or encourage that. However, we did work with the developer knowing that there's such a demand for building lots today. All the firms are busy. So our staff were on board during the construction, and you'll see that in future staff reports as we move forward with the acceptance of the works. I don't think there's anything else I need to raise at this time, but I do recommend to council to recommend to the United Counties to approve the final stages of the subdivision, as well as enter into the subdivision agreement. And as we always say, there could be some grammatical errors that may have to be fixed, or a couple things between now and the final registration of the plan. You'll see there's some blanks in the subdivision agreement where we will enter in the M plan when it's registered. So those are administrative things that our clerk and myself will look after once our council has approved this. So please let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Haley, for your report. Are there any questions of members of council? Seeing none. Moved by Martin Lang, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be it resolved that staff report 85-2021 be received, and that bylaw 52-2021 be approved, and that the council of the township of South Glengarry recommends to the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry Director of Planning to issue final approval for the draft plan of subdivision known as Place Saint Laurent, Phase 5, legally described as part of Lot 3, registered plan number 101, former township of Schlomberg, now in the township of South Glengarry, county of Glengarry, and furthermore authorizes administration to clear the township draft plan conditions and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the subdivision agreement. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Alrighty. Moving on to item C, Purcell subdivision draft plan approval extension request. Ms. Haley.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So this extension request was received by email by the current property owners, knowing that the draft plan approval is going to expire in the fall. It is my understanding that the property owners have the property up for sale. I believe it's not listed with an agent. I believe it's just listed by themselves at this time. But I think it's important for them to secure an extension in order for them to encourage or facilitate a sale in the future. When you apply for a plan of subdivision, you are issued draft plan approval as per the Ontario Planning Act for a period of 3 years. The Planning Act allows you to apply for extensions every year thereafter. In this particular case, or I shouldn't say this particular case, in all cases in SDNG, the United Counties recently have been issuing draft plan approval extensions for a period of 2 or 3 years to allow the developer to give them more time to move forward. And also there's a fee that has to be paid. So by not doing it annually, it actually saves the developer a little bit of money. In order for the United Counties to extend the draft plan approval, they always look for support from the local municipality to ensure that this is something that we're supportive of. You may notice in my staff report that I speak to a different agreement that was part of this plan of subdivision, where there was a commitment made to allocate water and wastewater connections. And I've also indicated that we will be bringing a report to council, hopefully in July. Mr. Sege and I are going to be working together to determine the available capacity, but also to update you on that agreement and explain why it will be null and void. And so I just want to I wanted to put that in the staff report to let you know that we were aware of this, we were on top of this, but that this does not have any impact on our recommendation to council to recommend the extension. The reason why I feel it doesn't have any impact is because the Planning Act allows for extensions. I feel it's important for us to provide extensions given the time and money that's invested to get to the draft plan stage. And the Planning Act also allows for major or minor changes to be done to subdivisions. So let's say we're not able to commit municipal water and wastewater services, it will still allow them to alter the draft plan design without having to start from scratch. So I know that maybe some of this information seems confusing, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but I do believe it's in our best interest to recommend that the draft plan extension be considered and recommend to the United Counties to approve it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Haley. I just want to verify it to be very clear. If we give them an extension as per your recommendation, this does not mean that we are stuck with 47 water connections and the 42 wastewater connections. That was in the previous agreement.
That is correct, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And the reason why I'm so clear on that is because that agreement says that if infrastructure installation was not approved and commenced prior to July 1st, 2021, the agreement becomes null and void. So we're pretty confident that no approvals and installation can occur between the 21st and the first day of July. It's virtually impossible. In fact, it would have had to have been started, maybe a year ago or at least, several months ago type thing. And again, we'll speak to that in an upcoming report.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions of council? Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you through you, Deputy Mayor. Ms. Haley, so thank you to Deputy Mayor's question, clarifying about how this is not tied to the water and wastewater connection issue. But beyond that, are there any other risks to extending this kind of agreement?
So through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, in my opinion, there are very, very limited risks, only because we're following the legislation. So obviously the Planning Act allows the extensions. This subdivision is not very old. It was draft plan approved in 2015. Very few, if any, provincial legislation has really changed since then. And even if, let's say, the county's extended for a period of 2 or 3 years, even if new changes come on board, they still are required to update the studies to make sure the development meets all of the provincial policy requirements or provincial approval requirements, like an environmental compliance approval and things like that, before they can get final approval anyway. So I really feel there's limited risks, and I feel that this is a tool in the Planning Act that's offered for us to be supportive of our developers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question. We've been extending subdivision approval down in Banesville for many, many years on the one property. So it's certainly commonplace. Seeing no other questions, moved by Councillor Stephanie Jaworski, second by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that staff report 86-2021 be received, and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry recommends to United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry Director of Planning to extend draft plan approval for 3 years for the subdivision known as Purcell Subdivision, legally described as part of Lot 37, Registered Plan 101 in the former Township of Charlottenburg, now in the Township of South Glengarry, County of Glengarry. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to item D, delegated authority for tax extensions. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So I'll just give a little update as to the process. A few years ago, the government of Ontario allowed us to go after or start our tax sale proceedings within 2 years versus 3 years. So that's background point number one. But otherwise, this is save for taking council away from the conversation. making it a little bit more, I guess it'd be reducing red tape really, because the last one of these we did, the person came in and drove from Quebec, we signed it. He had to go, had to bring it back to closed session. He had to come back. Like it was somewhat burdensome for the other user or the person who last had to sign one of these. And that's what we're trying to do with it. But otherwise the why stays the same. Like it's the same terms that I would have brought to council. Other municipalities have done this. It does help expedite that process. Obviously, if there was a big issue, council can always be involved. But for many of them, they're just trying to sign, we'll pay half now, we'll pay the other half and current within the next 2 years. And this just allows me to do it that day if they drive in instead of having to wait. In that case, it just happened to be the day after a council meeting. So that one was a little long. But no matter what, this is trying to reduce that the timeline between having that agreement ready. And a little history on tax sales. You will hear the auditors will be coming next meeting. We haven't been aggressive on them, but we should start probably 2022 or mid 2022. I know we've been kind of kind during the pandemic, and rightfully so. I think that was good direction because of the current circumstances. But our arrears are growing. So this will also help once we get that going, because it is a staff report every time. And I would appreciate it. I'm sure some of the users would appreciate it, but if council's will, I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you very much for your report, Mr. McDonald. I personally would like to see staff specifically in this department regarding tax arrears do a better job to try and locate a residence. We've had a couple of complaints over the last couple of years where a local individual stating that how come I, all of a sudden, and why didn't anybody pick up the phone and call me? So I would just hope that we can do a little better due diligence trying to locate folks who are in arrears and hopefully avoid this situation altogether. But anyways, I'll open it up to the floor for, go ahead, Mr. McDonald.
Yes, and I think council has supported financial services, so we should be able to do a better job as we have more people to put this burden on them. So I appreciate that. So if we don't do better, then that's on me because you've provided for us. I appreciate that.
That's a fair comment. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for your report, Mr. McDonald, and I apologize to spring a question on you, but I was wondering if you've given yourself sort of a target in terms of metrics on this one. I know that, we've had years where our arrears collection has been very good and some years where it's not been so good. Have you or your department tried to set a target that you would like to meet sort of on a more regular basis?
Yes, we'd like to be in Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing provides us with a report card annually. We're one of the few departments that really get a report card still. So, and we recently, as of 2019, went down to medium. 2021 we'll be back into high risk, meaning that our arrears are high in comparison to our own tax levy, and even high in compared to total tax levy. The number I was going for is sub 15. The year after we initiated this, which was 2019, we met it. We have not kept up with it. I would prefer to be 10% lower, and I'll bring that number to council. I know I put it on a budget in 2019 as kind of our highlight. I haven't highlighted it since because it hasn't been a highlight. But I would prefer to have tax arrears as 10% of the total levy, including county and school board, because that seems to be a spot where some of the lower tiers are, and then it also gets us on low on that Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing report card. Ideally, it would be 0, but that will never happen. So I target 10, and within 3 years would be great. If we hit it within 2, that'd be considered a bigger success.
Okay, great. Thank you. Glad to hear that there is a target.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you, Mr. McDonald, thanks for the report. Generally speaking, don't like to remove any oversight that council has, but in this instance, I see the point in it. What I would like is, I think I'm going to vote in favor of this, but I would like to see a little more feedback a little more often about where we're at with arrears. I know the last number I'd heard was 4.4 million or something like that. I can't remember the exact number, but it was in that range. But I'd like to see council update a little more often, and I think the more often we're updated, the more that we'll keep on top of it.
Yeah.
I think your first report back, you will not be impressed with the efforts. Over the last 2 years, naturally, we haven't been too aggressive. So our numbers have climbed, but I will anticipate probably by June of 2022, we will start seeing a decline. So I expect a slight uptick before going down, but that will be, our efforts will be, say, January, February, March 2022, we'll start that mailing campaign to, and it garnered quite a bit of success last time, so I don't see why it wouldn't this time. And there are some fairly big contributors to that, like large properties that we do have to chase off every year. So whenever we stop chasing for 2 years, that culminates to make a bigger number. So I anticipate that number to be bigger at year end 2021, but smaller at year end 2022.
And I think that's understandable with COVID. I think this council was very understanding that there were people that were put in a tight spot. So I think as we come out of this, we need to get right back on track.
I agree. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions of council? Seeing none, moved by Sam Actadell, second by Martin Lang, be resolved that staff report 87-2021 be received, and that bylaw 53-2021, being a bylaw to delegate authority to the treasurer to grant tax extensions, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed and open council this 21st day of June 2021. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to item E, CIAO Internet and Cascara Energy proposed amendment. I am not sure who is speaking to this staff report.
That would be Ms. Beggs.
Oh, okay, perfect. Ms. Beggs. You're on mute.
There we go. Thank you. Good evening, council and staff. I'm very happy to present this report this evening. It's a really, really exciting initiative, and it's kind of the first of its kind in all of Ontario. It almost sounds too good to be true, but it actually is true. The program itself is offered through a company called Cascara Energy. They have partnered with EPCOR, who is an energy natural gas provider. They're based out of Western Canada, but they're looking to develop more infrastructure here in Ontario. So they have partnered, and together they have formed a unique ability to be able to provide natural gas and high-speed internet to rural customers. So when I say high speed, I mean like fiber internet, not the towers. It's when MP Duncan was speaking earlier, I just wanted to like jump in and say there's an answer, and it's not going to take a whole lot of time. So what Cascara is actually proposing is that they would like South Glengarry's to enter into a franchise agreement. The franchise agreement is something very similar to what we already have with Enbridge Gas right now. So anytime development is taking place for a gas company through the Ontario Energy Board, it requires the provider to have a franchise agreement with the municipality. The franchise agreement does not mean that it's for one company only. It's specific to the project. So because we got some good news not too long ago from Enbridge that they're going to be setting up in Glendale subdivision, we don't have the timing on that right now. However, one of the first steps will be to come before council with a franchise agreement and to start the process with that particular development. So this is same thing. What Cascara is asking for is council's support. Just this evening, just a letter of support so that they can then send it to the Ontario Energy Board and let them know that council is reviewing the franchise agreement. And we could get legal advice on that. And then once that has happened and upon approval, then the next step for Cascara would be to proceed with their plan. So Mr. Crogran presented to council a few weeks ago, and I know he talked about a lot of different kinds of things. And he was, so he kind of gave you a high level overview, but basically what they're proposing to do is to connect natural gas to the Banesville area to start off. And while they dig the lines for natural gas, they're also going to put in fiber. So every home that has natural gas will also have the option to connect to high-speed internet, specifically fiber internet. So it's a pretty good deal. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your presentation. I too think this is a good initiative, and my concern is that we will get it reviewed with our solicitor, just to make sure that it doesn't put the township in a position where we're at a disadvantage. Are there any other questions of members of council? Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you for your report, Ms. Beggs. I know I'm trying to be optimistic with the program. I'm excited so long as it's going to go forward. I definitely want it reviewed by the solicitor to be sure we aren't putting ourselves in a bad position or there's nothing that's concerning to him. I'll definitely have some questions directly for him when that time comes. If there's any way we can ever speed this up and getting more internet service and more coverage with natural gas, it's definitely a blessing for the communities. And I know Banesville is one that's been on the radar for, we've made applications on their behalf through our connectivity committee, and there's been a lot of work put into it. I know myself went out and counted how many different maybe propane heated houses are in that area, and there's definitely a lot of opportunity for whatever natural gas company can get there first. And like we said, cell service is always internet connection, especially fiber to the home, is a huge bonus to any community. So hopefully this pans out, and we'll be sure to dot our I's and cross the T's. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jaworski.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Beggs, for bringing this forward. I like how you said, like it almost sounds like it's too good to be true. And I mean, there is an element of that, but sometimes creative solutions do sound like that at the beginning because no one's done it yet. So I very much support what Deputy Mayor Warden and Councillor McDonnell have said, that, let's just make sure that, we have a, good legal review, and to ensure that, we're not exposing ourselves to any unnecessary risk, just to move forward with our eyes open. But yeah, maybe this is a creative solution that's going to solve a lot of our problems. So why not?
Thank you very much, Councillor Jaworski. Councillor Lang.
Not too much to add. I think you guys have kind of covered it. I would have liked to seen a little more behind the company in the presentation. I would have liked to seen it, but when you're starting out something new, sometimes you don't have a lot behind it to show what you've done. So as long as we're not locking ourselves in with something and ruling, being tied to this, and we don't have options, I want to keep our options open. I don't want to slow down anything else if this doesn't pan out. So I'm willing to give it a try.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ms. Beggs.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think I forgot to add something too, that Cascara is not actually asking for any money. So they're not going to be applying for necessarily any funding. Their business model actually allows for everything to be paid for by their users. So when we say shovel in the ground, because they're not waiting on government funds or additional funding, they can literally put their shovels in the ground very quickly and get things moving a lot faster than potentially other projects.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no further comments, moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Sam Actonel. Be it resolved that staff report 88-2021 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry endorse in principle the municipal access agreement and model franchise agreement proposed by Cascara Energy and CIAO Internet, and that council direct administration to prepare these agreements, and furthermore that council directs administration to prepare a letter of support for the project to be provided with the applicant's Ontario Energy Board submission. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Baggs.
Thank you.
Moving on to item F, signing authority, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Pretty much a housekeeping item. We're requesting that you approve Deputy Mayor Warden as a signatory to the bank. It will help improve our process. And then essentially the steps will be approved tonight. We'll get a stamp made for Deputy Mayor's signature, and it will just allow for continuity of business. So I'm looking for that tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm still sliding through to go to that report. Are there any questions of members of council? Through you, Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Warden. Sorry, I should have asked this earlier, but because Mr. Prevost's on leave, do we have to remove him from signing authority, or is it because if one is on leave, they're automatically not eligible for signing?
I didn't look perfectly into that. We just had the preference for an active member of council to be on it. So as he's just on leave at present time, we wanted to remain with signing, but we would use Deputy Mayor Warden's signatory. We do have presently the CAO, myself, as well as our on maternity leave Deputy Treasurer as signatory, so we are able to continue, but we do prefer to have one legislative, which would be Deputy Mayor Warden, and one administrating, typically being me. So
Right.
we're not.
And there's always one of each, right? There's always one of each.
Yes, at times for rushes we have made accommodations, but the majority of our checks go out signed by one of each. I will look further into that if we have to remove that name, or if it would be prudent to do so. At present, that wasn't my concern. It was chiefly to get a second legislative signature.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of members of council? Seeing none, moved by Martin Lang, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be it resolved that staff report 89-2021 be received, and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry authorize all checks of the corporation drawn on its accounts to be signed on its behalf by Mayor Frank Prevost, Deputy Mayor Lyle Warden, CAO Tim Mills, General Manager of Finance / Treasurer Lachlan McDonald, and Deputy Treasurer Kayla McDonald, and that they be authorized to sign all other documents required in this matter. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to other business. Committee reports. So our CA, they're there for your, I'm looking for a little guidance here, Madam Clerk. We just kind of.
No problem. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So in other business, we have the 4 items that were pulled when the agenda was approved, so that they wouldn't be showing up on your agenda in other business. But the first item that would be in there for discussion is the Public Works Facility Report.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So page 138, basically, I don't know, did any other member request that to be brought forward? Or was it, Kate, Councillor Lang, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty self-explanatory when we read it, and I don't think that there was a lot there for us to debate, but I did want to thank staff for bringing it forward, because we had asked to have that done. And if we're going to go with in-floor heating in the garage, it looks like it's going to be $150,000 to $175,000 more than the Radiant. And obviously the payback is not going to be there with any hydro savings over the years. But I want to thank staff for looking into it and finding that out for us. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I also would like to comment that I understand that it says here increased need for subfloor insulation. I still think that I would like us to maybe consider adding insulation anyways, as I believe adding more insulation today, regardless of the heating system, will have a net benefit in the future. And it would also reduce our carbon footprint, as these buildings will be heated with propane and maybe someday, if we're lucky, natural gas. Seeing no other acting chief, or sorry, Chief Robertson, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just for some guidance here. So the project is, construction is fairly imminent. They'll start work with the subsurface work today and tomorrow. So that begins this week. Would council like pricing on additional insulation properties? For more direction, I had asked our contractors and our engineers and the architects that same question. Is there a value to putting more subsurface insulation in a building such as this? And they didn't see the need to add a significant amount. I could ask them what level would be cost effective to do. I'm just looking for some direction, cognizant of the timeline of the construction of the building.
Well, I mean, be honest with you, at this point, I believe it's beyond that. However, I would like staff to consider energy efficiency as if not the #1 priority, very high at the top. I mean, this is going to be a minimum of 50-year building, and I feel like when you're installing a floor, if you're adding an extra 6 inches of insulation, it may not pay off right at the get-go, but in the future, as heating expenses will more than likely rise, that will pay for itself. But I don't know. I feel that at this point it's too late. I just felt like I needed to say that. I believe Councillor Lang had his hand up, and then Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and through you. Yeah, I suspect we're at that point. I don't know if I'm not a building expert or an engineer or anything. We did put in-floor heating in the shop when we built it, and I think the reason for the insulation when you do in-floor heating is that the heat goes up into the building rather than down into the ground. And I think that was the reasoning what they told us when we put it in, to have the insulation there. The ground temperature is always around 10 degrees. And I think if your building is heated, you're never going to have frozen ground underneath that. So I don't think you're losing a lot that way, as long as it's not coming in from the foundations. So, and I'm no expert, but that's just my personal opinion, but that I think it's more relevant with in-floor heating, just to make sure that the heat is going up rather than down. And, you know, I think that's the reason. So I think we can likely live without it, but if there is something, I think we should be looking into these things and have these things kind of figured out ahead of time. And you know, next building or whatever we do moving forward, we'll see. There is some floor to be changed in the renovations for the firehouse, so we can definitely look into it for that.
Hey, Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor Warden. I want to just lend support to what Deputy Mayor Warden is saying. You know, in principle, I think it's really important that we do put a lot of focus on energy efficiency. I know sometimes in the past we've fallen back on the building code, and you know, meeting the building code does meet certain levels of energy efficiency, but I think we need to go beyond that, both from from the economics of it. Definitely, you know, saving energy costs pays itself back in the end, but also from an environmental perspective as well. And there are rural municipalities out there that are going, are setting themselves zero carbon targets down in the future. And I think, we should start, I'm not saying maybe we go that far, but I'm saying I think we need to start looking at this a bit more aggressively and maybe start trying to have some sort of policy so that when we do these projects, that's more part of the decision-making process. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to
Yes.
build on that, administration has been discussing the fact that we will be increasing the merits of the environment and efficiency of buildings much more in our evaluation matrices for projects as we move forward, more so than just cost, as we had often done in the past. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much for that discussion. I see CAO Mills, you're on. Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Warden. So first I want to thank Chief Robertson for engaging the engineering company. There are a number of things that are a lesson here. When MP Duncan was talking tonight about grants, what happens when we go to apply for grants, some could be energy efficiency, is the government will want reports, which in the past we didn't have, or I think it was a combination of administration not having them, and perhaps council wondering about the value of investing up front, because the studies are not cheap to get done. So the reports, the studies, the reviews that are done ahead of time might seem like it's an added cost to a facility, but to Councillor Jaworski's point of if it's done up front and then we actually do it and build it into the cost, then we don't get ourselves into trouble with the taxpayer or with council saying, well, you come in over budget because you're adding it after. We need to put it out there right at the beginning. So it's what Chief Robertson said there, like we're committed to that. I also have heard from council tonight about we need to have an energy efficiency policy, and then it's clear about how we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much, CAO Mills. Okay, so that was a very good discussion, everyone. Moving on to the next item is M, letter for Rail Safety Week. I believe I was the one that asked, or did anybody else ask for it as well? I see not. So this was an email received from CN requesting that we pass a bylaw proclaiming September as Rail Safety Week. As you're all aware, we have the busiest rail in Canada running right through our municipality, as well as CP to the north, parts of the north. So I think it's imperative as council, we need to endorse this and make sure that our residents are aware and to be safe around trains. Any other comments? Madam Clerk.
Yes, just through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. As you mentioned, you asked for this to be brought forward, and just to add to that, this is a request that we typically receive every year, and council usually supports this. So I did prepare a resolution for this evening should council decide that you want to go ahead and support this initiative again this year. And then that gives administration lots of time to prepare some promotional items for when that week comes up in September, so that we can show our support for Rail Safety Week once again this year.
Absolutely. So seeing no, Councillor McDonnell.
I'd gladly support the motion as well, if the rest of council is there.
You're seconding it. Okay. All righty. So seeing no further discussion, moved by Martin Lang, second by Sam McDonnell. Whereas Rail Safety Week is to be held across Canada from September 20th to 26, 2021. And whereas it is in the public's interest to raise citizens' awareness of the dangers of ignoring safety warnings at level crossings and trespassing on rail property to reduce avoidable deaths, injuries, and damage caused by incidents involving trains and citizens. And whereas Operation Lifesaver is a public/private partnership whose aim is to work with the public, rail industry, governments, police services, media, and others to raise rail safety awareness. And whereas CN has requested that council adopt a resolution in support of its ongoing efforts to raise awareness, save lives, and prevent injuries in communities, including our municipality. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry hereby supports National Rail Safety Week to be held from September 20th to 26th, 2021. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, Lyme disease resolution. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. So this is an issue that hits very close to home for me. So with his permission, I can share that several years ago, my husband Ron started experiencing, an unexplained and debilitating joint pain. And it took a couple years after that for him to be finally diagnosed with Lyme disease. And that diagnosis happened somewhat by chance when my mom, who's a dermatologist, saw that all the different specialists that Ron saw and various treatments he was receiving were unsuccessful. She suggested he be tested for Lyme disease. So the reason I'm sharing that is I wanted to highlight a few things that relate to this motion from the City of St. Catharines. One is that there needs to be more awareness about Lyme disease. Eastern Ontario is considered a region at risk for Lyme disease, and yet many of our residents still suffer in silence before getting a proper diagnosis. A couple of decades ago, Lyme disease was very rare in Ontario, and now we have, around 1,000 cases per year, and that number is continuing to grow as our winters get milder and the range where ticks can survive grows. So it's hard because it's not top of mind, because there's low awareness. It's hard for people to get diagnosis. Even in Ron's case, he never found a tick and he never had evidence of a tick bite. Also, untreated Lyme disease can progress to be very debilitating, both physically and financially, if it's not caught early. Like, for example, in Ron's case, he's tried lots of different treatments that have been minimally effective, and now he's on a medication that seems to be promising, but thank goodness I have good health insurance, because it's like $2,000 a month. So, and lastly, like the City of St. Catharines says in their letter, we don't have diagnostic tools in Ontario that other areas have. There's a lot of Ontarians who travel to the US for diagnosis and treatment because there in the US, they've been dealing with Lyme disease longer, and they have more diagnostic tools and more treatment options. So all that to say, I hope my colleagues around the table will support this, support a resolution that supports this motion by the City of St. Catharines on increasing the awareness around Lyme disease and calling on the upper tiers of government to try and put more resources towards it. Thank you.
No problem. Are there any other questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a seconder to support the motion for Councillor Jaworski? Seconded by Councillor Lang. Thank you very much. Moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry hereby supports the resolution passed by the Council of the City of St. Catharines and calls on the Ontario government to expand testing on all strains of Lyme disease and improve the level of treatment and care for those diagnosed with this crippling disease. And furthermore, that this resolution be sent to the Premier of Ontario, the Ontario Minister of Health, MPP Jim McDonnell, the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, and all Ontario municipalities. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Very worthy motion. Moving on to letter R, bell time changes. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. So as you know, I'm an active member of the WPS and Charlan Parent Council, so I'm acutely aware of the concern within those school communities about the bell time changes. Just, to refresh, currently Charlan and WPS, their bell times are aligned and the students ride the bus to and from school together. However, the Upper Canada District School Board is proposing that Charlan be moved to an 8 a.m. starting time and WPS be moved to a 9:30 start time. So the staggering of those times are going to have a significant impact on many families, because now older siblings or local teens won't be able to help get the younger children on the bus in the morning, which puts additional burden on many parents. And also the younger children will be getting home very late, also causing challenges to extracurricular participation. So there was no consultation conducted by the Upper Canada with the parents or students affected in Williamstown. So those school councils, they did a survey of their own to collect the feedback. And you can see that feedback detailed in the package that they sent us. And you can also see there that there's a clear majority of parents at those schools that want the schools to stay aligned, even if that means both schools move to 8 a.m. There isn't enthusiasm for the 8 a.m. start time, but because the Upper Canada says that alignment's a key part of their plan for a district-wide timetable at the secondary level, even though we would have hoped they could have implemented that in a regional way, it seems like the likelihood of that changing is very low. But so when it comes to why WPS has to go to a later start time, the explanation for that has been a bit unclear. It's difficult for us to understand why having staggered bell times and having buses doing 2 trips in the morning, the same route, and 2 trips in the afternoon, the same route, is going to save money, because we're doubling fuel costs there. So considering that it's going to add thousands of dollars in childcare for many parents, I think it's fair that I would like us to support their request for additional, more detailed information about why this change has to be, so that it can better understand why, and maybe it's be easier to concede that they need to start spending that much more on childcare if they could have a better understanding of why this has to be done. So I'd like to support their request for this additional information.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jaworski. I'll say it again. I wholeheartedly appreciate the hard work that you and the group of parents at WPS and Charland parent councils have done on this file. Quite honestly, it's disheartening with the lack of response from the school board. I feel that they've not answered any of the questions that have been asked, and I don't feel that they should not be able to answer them. They should have to answer them. It's very, very disheartening. So I'm looking for any other questions or comments from members of council. Councillor Lang.
I'd support this 100%. I don't know if you want a seconder, if there's a motion for tonight, or if
I will need a seconder.
And I'd be happy to support that. I think, this community's gone through quite a struggle in the last few years to try to make sure that they kept the schools there. And it just seems like they're getting hit again. It boggles the mind how they think that doing the bus run twice, when the buses aren't full now, is going to be better for anyone. It just, anyway, we've gone through that, so I'll support it.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Martin Lang. Whereas the Upper Canada District School Board will be implementing bell time changes for Williamstown Public School and Charland District High School for the 2021-2022 school year. And whereas Williamstown Public Schools bell time will occur at 9:30 a.m., while Charland District High School bell time will occur at 8 a.m. And whereas the Council of the Township of South Glengarry has previously expressed concern that the changes to the bell times fails to consider families whose children attend both levels of schooling, resulting in challenges for parents to accommodate both schedules. And whereas the parent councils of both Williamstown Public School and Charland District High School have expressed similar concerns in writing to Upper Canada District School Board and have presented the board with a series of detailed questions and requests for additional information. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry supports the parent councils of Williamstown Public School and Charland District High School in their efforts to have demonstrated that the overwhelmingly majority of parents at Williamstown Public Schools wish to keep the bell times of Williamstown Public School and Charland District High School aligned, and urges the Upper Canada District School Board to provide the parent councils with the information requested in their letter dated June 15th, 2021. Madam Clerk. I'd also like to add that this resolution be circulated to MPP McDonnell, the Minister of Education, and all municipalities in the Upper Canada District School Board. Is that possible? You're on mute.
Yes, I can add those changes to the resolution prior to it being circulated.
Please, I feel it's imperative that they hear from us loud and clearly that this is unacceptable. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And thank you again to you, Councillor Jaworski. This is definitely a concerning file. Okay, moving on to closed session. Moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry accepts the items presented on the agenda as committee reports and for information only. All those in favor? Motion is carried. I'm just reading from the screen, so I thought I was reading a different one. Okay, now into closed session. Moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry convene to close session at 8:21 p.m. to discuss the following item under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act, SO 2001. 2A, a meeting of part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried.